Still under layer options, first on the list is general, and under general we have title. Title gives an information about that particular layer. In our case, let's type header and hit on OK. Hit on the F5 key. This should load in the browser. Now hover over the layer and it gives us the information header. Let's minimize our browser and come back to the layer options. Next is overflow, and when we click on the drop down arrow, we have 4 categories over here. We have none, hidden, scroll, and auto. None does simply none. It doesn't do anything. And when we come to hidden, hidden hides any information that goes below the layer. To show you that, let me click on OK and come back to the toolbox, click on text tool, draw on an empty space in the layer 2 and populate it with some 2-paragraph text. You realize the text goes below the layer over here. Let me click on the layer and hit on F5. As you can see in the browser, the rest of the text doesn't show. This is what hidden does. Let's minimize and come back to our layer options. Now let's choose scroll. Hit on OK. And you realize there's a horizontal scroll and there's a vertical scroll over here. Let's hit on F5 and see what happens. So even though we didn't need the horizontal scroll, it gave us horizontal scroll. Now let's minimize it and come back to the layer options. This time around we will select auto. So drop down and select auto. Click on OK and let's expand this a little bit. And let's move this a little bit here. Now let's hit on F5 and see what happens. So it gave us a horizontal scroll as well. Because auto will know what is going to be the best for us, that is why it gave us horizontal scroll. Let's continue to style our layer for our project. Now navigate to style. Under style we have predefined style, we have background, we have border. We are going to concentrate on background and on the border. When you come to background, we have background mode. And when you click on the drop down arrow, we have categories over here. We have transparent, solid, image, gradient, multicolor gradient, pattern and texture. Transparent is absolutely transparent and it's going to make the background of your layer 2 over there just white or probably no color. By default, the browser uses white, so you may see it as a white color. Now when we come to solid, this gives us an option to select a color. And when you click on the drop down arrow, we have wide varieties of colors over here. You can simply select one and it changes to that color. When we click on OK, the effect takes place. Next on our list is image. And when we click on image, we therefore have to select a source that contains an image to be our background. As you can see, I have already selected an image over here. You can simply hit on the browse icon to select an image from your machine that is going to be used as the background image over there. When you are done, just click on open and it's going to open that particular image. So when you select an image, the next to it is repeat, and when you click on the drop down arrow, we have repeat in both direction. Repeat in horizontal direction, repeat in vertical direction, and do not repeat. Repeat in both direction means when I click on OK, the image is going to continue repeating based on the size of that particular image. The image I selected happens to be a smaller image. That is why it is repeating in my layer. Now let's come back and it's still under style. Now let's select repeat in horizontal direction and let's see what happens. So as you can see, it's only repeated in horizontal direction and there's a white space over here. Now let's come back and select repeat in vertical direction and see what happens. The same thing happens, repeat in vertical direction, this time around vertically. Now let's come back and select do not repeat. And let's see what happens. This time around, it's using the original size of the image in our layer. Let's come back and see other options we have over here. To the right, we have size. And when you click on the drop down arrow, we have empty, we have cover, contain, parallax, 100%, 50%. In our case, we are just going to talk about cover and contain, and the rest will be covered later. So let's click on cover, and now let's click on OK. It's covered the entire layer over here, but this doesn't really look good because the size of the image is a smaller image. So I don't think this is going to be best of options. Now let's come back and let's select contain. Now let's see what contain also does. Contain actually happen to fill the horizontal section and leaving some white space over here. Let's come back here and now let's go to horizontal. So horizontally, we can either align the image to the left, center, and right. And when we come to vertical, to either the top, center, or bottom. Let's go ahead and change the color of our layer to white. So let's come to style and style background, then we select solid and change the color to white. Now let's click on OK, and let's go ahead to resize the layer. So let's move it to the top, and now let's stretch it a little bit to the right hand side. It looks like the site manager is going to be blocking our space over here. So let me unpin it or auto hide it over here. And let me keep resizing it to the edge. It is supposed to be 970 pixels by default. To be sure it's 970 pixels, that is when we use the inspector tool. I have already opened my inspector tool, and you can go ahead to open your inspector tool. Under inspector tool, we will come to size, and when we click on the arrow over here, it gives us width and height. The first figure over here is width, and the second is the height. So if you want to be resizing, you probably have to know where to be putting what. So in my case, I'm going to change this to 970, you put a comma, and the next is going to be 100 pixels. I therefore hit on the enter, and it takes effect. Now let's simply copy and paste this layer and use it as the header section and the footer section. To copy, just right click on it and select copy, or by using the keyboard functions Ctrl+C to copy. And to paste, just use Ctrl+V or right click on an empty space and select paste. We have two ways of pasting. We have either paste in place or paste. So to paste in place, it means it's going to paste exactly where you copy the item. And to do so, you can use Ctrl+Shift and V and it does the same thing, or you can right click on empty space and select paste in place. Let's go ahead and delete the additional layer tools and stick to two over here. So I'll delete this, and drag this down. Let's see, there's no additional. Okay, so this is only two layers I'm going to be working with. I'm going to use the top section as the header and the down section as the footer. Let me resize the footer to 970 by 50 pixels. And it takes place. Now let me move it a little bit down. And at this section, we are going to talk about a very important aspect, that is the content placeholder. The content placeholder allows us to load master page information onto selected pages which have selected this particular page as the master page. To create a content placeholder, simply navigate to Toolbox and under Advanced, select your content placeholder. Click on it and draw on an empty space over here. Let's resize the content placeholder. Let's come to the Property Inspector and make the size of it 970 pixels by 250 pixels. Hit on enter. Now let's move the content placeholder to the position we want it to be. So let's move it a little bit into the middle, and let's move it a little bit away from the header. So hitting on the down arrow key 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's add additional 2 to it. 5, 6. Now let's move the footer a little bit below the content placeholder. And now let's hit on the down arrow key 4 times to create a space in between here and in between here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like the spaces in between are equal. They may not necessarily be equal, but to get an equal space between the content placeholder and the header and the content placeholder and the footer, what we can do is select the content placeholder, select the footer as well by holding on the shift key and clicking on the footer, and select the header as well by still holding on the shift key and selecting the header. Now let's go to arrange, and under arrange, let's go to vertical. So when you click on vertically, this creates an equal spacing in between the content placeholder and the header and the content placeholder and the footer. We will talk more about the arrange properties in a later video.